Hey people, I'm back home in Santa Fe, or I'm back home in Albuquerque from Santa Fe after a lovely birthday trip. And my birthday was really interesting because it was, as always, as I mentioned yesterday, it's a time that I often reflect. It's a time that I've, in my family, it's sort of become a tradition. So also just in my own practice, it's become something that it's almost automated, that around that time I start to reflect a bit. And also, as I mentioned yesterday, I'm really interested in doing something even more kind of deliberate in the way that James Clear talks about in his book, Atomic Habits, which is a fantastic book that I read, or I listened to the Audible, and it's one of those books where it's like you just want to go back and read every chapter again because it gives you so much practical stuff to potentially incorporate. But what has really kind of felt like it's online for me is this idea that came through me the other day, maybe it was the day before my birthday, about creative spirituality. Because that insight really kind of rocked me a little bit, really kind of woke me up. I found after I did my post that day, and I was already thinking about this idea that the creative process is a spiritual path of sorts. It's a spiritual practice. It is a spiritual path, and it can be a spiritual practice if we engage it that way. After that showed up, later that day I was teaching a lesson, and I literally felt principles of this practice, or of this way of engaging with the process, just popping through me. It was like the student that I had on that day was in a perfect place to hear this stuff. She was already kind of, some of it was coming to her already, but it was in the reflection that I was giving her on where she was. I kept realizing, oh my God, this isn't just like some random thing I'm saying to her, or it's not just specific to her situation. It's actually something that's it illustrates a universal point about the way this process works. And I think I'm going to actually really go into this, possibly on this post, take a little time and outline these, what I see as the principles, and undoubtedly more are going to come to me. I ended up with something like 10 or 11 written down in an Evernote. And some of them may merge. In other words, some of them may turn out to kind of be two ways of saying the same thing. Others, I may discover others. But I'm really curious now to see how much I can unpack how the universal aspects of this creative process. So one of the things that came through one of the principles of the process is that, or features, I don't know if I call it a principle, but it's a feature, is that as we go through our own transformation, as we grow, as we travel through, what various spiritual traditions would call the stages of growth, stages of consciousness, illustrated in various different ways with different imagery and different types of metaphors and experiences, but a very universal journey. One of the features of the journey is that we go from being very clear and very secure about where we are, how our practice feels, where we're going, and then we start entering the next level, and we become insecure again. We get plunged into a form of usually some degree of existential crisis. Crisis might be a strong word, but it often feels like it's not less than a crisis, where we have to spend some time and remember that this crisis is a service to us. It's a gift to us. It's evoking our own next level of growth out of us. And as we assimilate that, as we clock that, as we both remember that this is serving us, and also absorb whatever new dimensions of consciousness are coming online as we grow, whether that means taking deeper responsibility, taking greater responsibility, whether it means drawing firmer boundaries, whether it means being more open, being less rigid, right? And these are all things that come up as a matter of course in the creative process. There are aspects of the spiritual, of a kind of consciousness, evolving consciousness journey that are inherent in any creative project where we are pushing our edge forward. If it's a creative project where we're treading water and it's not challenging us, then maybe these features won't appear, because we're kind of just operating within the known realm. But if we're going into the unknown, if we're in some way, we can, and virtually any creative project can offer us this opportunity. We're capable of opening that door into the unknown, no matter how simple or how short or how modest the project may be. There's always a way of discovering that spark of unknown and infusing the project with that life. And as we assimilate or integrate or recognize, transcend the issues that are feeling like limitation, and realize our own where the crisis is leading us, we then come back to a place of security and ease and peace, and we feel that all is right in the world. And then depending on how fast we've paced our spiritual journey for ourselves, we're eventually then going to tilt back into the next challenge. And I love recognizing that process as a pattern, and knowing that it doesn't mean that anything is wrong. That's the wonderful thing about bringing this kind of awareness to the creative process, is that things can even though it feels like crisis, that doesn't have to mean that anything is wrong. It just means that's the part of the evolving spiral journey that we're on. We're not gonna just be in blissful, peaceful, enlightened ease all the time. If we are, and we genuinely are, we're not just zoned out, then we're probably enlightened, and we're probably not we don't need to be on this planet anymore. Or we're a bodhisattva who's come back to help other beings become enlightened, but we're not here but our own evolution doesn't require any more experience. We get it. We understand. We're enlightened. But as long as we're still evolving, that cycle from kind of dark to light or ease to stress and tension and release is likely to continue. And I always try to find, it's always interesting to me to frame things in such a way that things that can feel like problems are actually not problems. And it's not, you can't do this by faking yourself out. You can't trick yourself into thinking this. You have to actually understand that it's true. But once we do, it becomes so much easier to embrace the next challenge, to be in crisis, to have a problem and think, yes. Even though it might not feel like we know the answer, we know that this is just a process, and we know how the cycles go. We know where this cycle is headed. So whatever the challenge is, we can embrace it. We can take the bull by the horns and kind of, I don't know that I love that expression, but you know what I'm saying. We can engage fully. So that's one of the features of creative spirituality that came to me in that lesson, and also in many other ways. But I find that really both inspiring and it's a relief. Isn't it a relief to know that when we think we have a problem, we actually don't? It's actually a great thing for us. That's amazing. So that's what's coming through today, people. I may spend the next several days kind of unpacking this, because I'm excited about outlining this for myself and really unpacking what's here. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you so much. Much love. Thank you all for your beautiful birthday wishes yesterday. That was so touching to receive. It was very moving. Thank you. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.